Imagine standing in a freezing Massachusetts cemetery in the middle of the night. You crack open a brick tomb that has been completely sealed for 20 years, and you find the person inside looking like they are, just taking a nap.
Yeah, or imagine sitting in a sweltering, locked room. You're watching a surgeon perform a flawless, life-saving appendectomy, but you know with absolute certainty that the surgeon performing it has been dead for 2 decades.
Right. Well, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at 3 verified, highly specific historical accounts today where biology, decomposition, and medical science completely broke down.
They really did.
And our mission today is not to just sit around sharing spooky campfire tales. We are treating these 3 accounts as data anomalies. We want to explore what actually happens when the neat, logical boxes of human knowledge completely shatter.
Which is a profound psychological threshold to cross, honestly.
Right.
We build our entire understanding of the world on the premise that cause leads to effect.
Yeah, basic logic.
Exactly. We trust that biological tissue decays, that complex surgeries require living hands, and that hallucinations are contained within individual minds. But the sources we are analyzing today highlight moments that refuse to fit into those scientific frameworks.
They really do.
They are anomalies that force us to confront the absolute limits of what we think we know.
It is deeply unsettling. And to kick things off, we are going back to the year 1870 to the quiet town of Malden, Massachusetts.
Okay.
We are following a Harvard medical student named James Adams and his classmate William. Now, these are men of science, right? They study the human body.
Right.
And on this specific night, they are sneaking into a cemetery with an unlit lantern, a hammer, and a chisel on a mission to debunk a local legend.
Yeah, they were targeting the brick mausoleum of a man named Ephraim Gray. And Ephraim was a reclusive chemist who had died 20 years earlier.
20 years? That's a long time to be in a box.
Exactly. And the rumors around Malden were that Ephraim had spent his final years trying to invent, a chemical potion for immortality.
Wow.
Now, people claimed that while the potion obviously didn't stop him from passing away, it supposedly made his physical biology immortal.
Huh.
His servant had even specifically requested that Ephraim not be embalmed before he was sealed in the mausoleum.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because knowing the medical context of 1870 is crucial here.
It really is.
In the late 19th century, embalming was still relatively primitive by today's standards. Medical students like James knew that undertakers primarily relied on heavy arsenic solution.
Right, which is highly toxic.
Extremely toxic. It's toxic to the bacteria that cause decomposition, so it halts cellular breakdown temporarily, but it is entirely a stopgap measure.
Yeah.
It fights a losing battle against environmental moisture and microbial life. Over 20 years, the arsenic leaches out, the bacteria take over, and a body sitting in a damp brick mausoleum should be, nothing more than a skeleton.
Exactly. The biological reality is unavoidable. So James and William pop the padlock, they push open the heavy door of this claustrophobic, cobweb-covered tomb, and they locate Ephraim's casket. And they pry it open. And the first thing they notice is that the clothing on the body has completely succumbed to the damp environment.
As it should.
Right. The fabric has rotted away into this stringy brown mush. But Ephraim himself, his skin is white, it is perfectly smooth. There's zero sign of putrefaction or cellular breakdown anywhere.
God, the visual disconnect there must have been staggering. To put it in modern terms, it's like pulling a 20-year-old battery out of a discarded radio, putting it in a flashlight, and watching it instantly turn on.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. The chemical energy should be entirely dissipated, the battery should be corroded, but instead, it's perfectly preserved. It violates the basic laws of entropy.
It does.
And James and William react exactly how you would expect. They panic, slam the casket shut, sprint out of the cemetery, and swear never to speak of it again.
But the narrative doesn't end in 1870. We actually jump forward 30 years to the year 1900.
Wow.
James is now in his 50s. He's operating as a successful doctor with his own medical practice in Boston. And a police officer arrives at his door with bizarre news.
Never a good sign.
No. The Malden Cemetery is being relocated for city expansion, and workers have discovered that Ephraim Gray's casket is entirely empty.
What?
Yeah, and the police had somehow learned that James and William broke in 30 years prior, so they are accusing the doctor of stealing the corpse. But James said they just looked, panicked, and ran.
But wait, I have to push back a little on the narrator's reliability regarding that initial break-in.
Okay.
Think about the psychological state of these 2 men. James and William are terrified medical students standing in a pitch-black, freezing, musty tomb.
True.
They have a single flickering lantern casting wild shadows. They've been hearing these intense local rumors about an immortal corpse for years. Couldn't they have simply hallucinated that pristine body?
It's a fair question.
Their brains were already primed by the town's rumors. They were exhausted. The lighting was terrible. Isn't it highly probable that they saw exactly what they were psychologically conditioned to expect and assumed the clothes were mush just because of the shadows?
What's fascinating here is that you are applying the exact same logical framework that James himself tried to apply for the next 30 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He desperately wanted to be a trick of the light, or an anomaly of preservation, or a stress-induced hallucination. He actually spent months scouring every chemistry and anatomy book in the Harvard Library, trying to find a scientific explanation for arrested decay.
Wow.
The clash between his trained medical mind and that visual evidence haunted him. But your theory of hallucination hits a massive wall when we look at the physical evidence in 1900.
Because of the empty casket?
Precisely. If we accept the premise that James and William merely looked inside, panicked at a hallucination of a pristine body, and ran away, leaving the actual decaying body behind, where did the physical remains go?
That is the big question.
The source documentation is very clear that there was no sign of tampering on the mausoleum by anyone other than those two students.
All right.
When the city workers went to move the grave, the casket was unusually light because there wasn't even a single bone fragment inside.
Nothing at all.
Nothing. The implication the source leaves us with is deeply chilling. If the body didn't decompose and no grave robbers ever stole it, did Ephraim Gray's experimental chemistry simply take 2 decades to fully activate?
Oh my God.
Did he wake up in that pitch-black tomb, completely restored, and just walk out into the night?
Which strips away all our comfortable scientific rationalizations. It leaves you staring into the dark, realizing the rules of biology might have loopholes we just can't comprehend.
Exactly.
But if Ephraim's story is about a physical body defying nature in secret, our next source demands a logical transition. If a physical shell can resist the rules of nature, does the consciousness attached to it linger as well? We are shifting gears from the passive dead to the very active dead. And we are moving from a secret, unverified midnight grave robbing to a highly public, heavily documented event.
We are moving to January 28th, 1945,
Yay.
inside a sweltering, cramped back room of a church in Brazil.
Right, and the atmosphere here is incredibly tense. You have an Australian reporter named Robert Cheney, and he's sitting shoulder to shoulder with a group of deeply skeptical, white-coated medical doctors.
Yeah.
The lights in the church are off, it's incredibly hot, there's an early record player, a phonograph, playing religious hymns on a loop.
Just adding to the mood.
Exactly. And riding in front of a heavy locked door are 2 psychic mediums.
The conditions for what was happening behind that locked door were utterly bizarre. The organizers claimed that a famous surgeon, Dr. Gomes, was performing an appendectomy on a patient inside that room.
In a church back room.
Yes, and the surgical constraints were seemingly impossible. The procedure had to be in this dusty church. The windows in the back room were completely boarded up from the inside and outside.
Completely sealed.
No one was allowed in the room with the patient. No nurses, no medical technicians, and absolutely no anesthesiologists.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there. Because medically speaking, that is a guaranteed death sentence.
Well, absolutely.
Think about the pure mechanics of an appendectomy. You have to cut through skin, fat, and muscle layers. Then you need to physically retract that tissue-like, pull it back and hold it open just to see the surgical field.
Right, which takes strength and precision.
Exactly. And while doing that, you have to achieve hemostasis, meaning you are clamping bleeding vessels so the patient doesn't bleed out. Then you carefully isolate the appendix from the cecum without nicking the bowel.
Because if you do,
If you nick the bowel, intestinal bacteria flood the abdominal cavity, causing instant massive sepsis. Doing all of that simultaneously requires, at minimum, 2 highly skilled sets of hands and incredibly bright overhead lighting.
Yeah.
And doing it without anesthesia. Wouldn't the patient immediately go into physiological shock from the sheer agony of the incision?
every single doctor sitting in that hallway knew exactly what you just described. They were waiting for the patient to scream or for the sound of a body hitting the floor.
They must have been terrified.
So they wait in the sweltering heat for over 2 hours, listening to these mediums groan in sympathetic pain, wondering what kind of butcher shop is operating behind that door.
God.
But the only way Dr. Gomes would communicate with the outside world was by channeling his voice through those two psychic mediums in the hallway. And finally, a booming voice from one of the mediums announces that the surgery is complete.
And when the doctors finally try the handle, the door is unlocked. They rush into the room fully expecting a crime scene. But the reveal is stunning.
It's unbelievable.
The patient is lying right in the middle of the room, completely conscious and calm. He is perfectly stitched up with precise surgical sutures. The surgery was a complete success.
Yeah.
And sitting in a glass jar right next to him on a makeshift operating table, floating in liquid, is his freshly removed inflamed appendix.
Just sitting there.
But Dr. Gomes,
Right.
the highly skilled surgeon who performed this complex tissue retraction and suturing, he is nowhere to be found.
Because Dr. Louis Gomes had been dead for 19 years.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because to me, this is the ultimate locked room mystery. Usually a locked room mystery is about a murder, a dead body is inside, the doors are locked from the inside, and the killer has vanished like smoke.
Exactly.
But this is the exact opposite. It's a locked room miracle. It's a complex, life-saving medical procedure where the savior vanishes like smoke. Now, if you're listening to this and rolling your eyes thinking, well, obviously someone simply snuck a real living doctor in through the back, you aren't alone.
No, the reporter in the room thought the exact same thing.
Right.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the most crucial element of this entire event is the audience itself. Why was Robert Cheney there? Why were those specific, highly skeptical doctors invited to sit in that sweltering church?
It's a good point.
The organizers deliberately packed that room with hostile witnesses. They knew that attempting to claim a ghost performed a flawless appendectomy is inherently absurd.
Of course.
Without an ironclad chain of custody, medical history would have entirely dismissed this as a parlor trick.
So the skeptics were the trap.
Precisely. Cheney and the doctors themselves helped board up the windows before the event. They thoroughly searched the room for hidden passageways, trapdoors, or concealed medical tools before the patient went inside.
Wow.
They sat in front of the only locked door for over 2 hours, never breaking their line of sight. The skeptics themselves became the guarantors of the impossible.
That's brilliant.
They had to swear on the official record that no living doctor ever entered or exited that room, rendering the patient utterly alone during the operation.
Unbelievable.
Furthermore, subsequent x-rays confirmed that the patient had indeed had his appendix surgically removed that day by someone demonstrating advanced anatomical knowledge.
I mean, the proof is right there in the x-rays.
To this day, it remains the only officially recorded, verified surgery performed by a spectral entity. It is a moment where medical science had to look at its own x-ray films and admit defeat.
It's staggering to think about those doctors running their fingers over those perfectly tied surgical sutures, knowing that the physical hands that tied them had decayed to bone decades ago.
It really is.
We've seen a physical body resist decay, and we've seen a consciousness return to heal. But our final source takes us into completely different psychological territory.
Yes, it does.
We are moving away from a public spectacle verified by skeptics and stepping into a highly intimate, shared family trauma. This is about a figure that doesn't heal, but acts as a harbinger of death itself.
We're looking at the morning of December 5th, 1957, near San Francisco, California.
It's 5:00 a.m. A 74-year-old woman named Frances wakes up in the pre-dawn darkness. Her husband, Gene, who is 82, has been incredibly sick for a few years, requiring constant care. He had been sleeping in the guest room, so his tossing and turning wouldn't wake her, but he usually came into her bed in the early morning. So when Frances feels a presence in the room, she naturally assumes it's June.
Makes sense.
But when she opens her eyes, she is looking down toward the foot of the bed, and the first thing she sees are these very distinctive shoes.
And the visual details here are incredibly important to the anomaly. The shoes were old-fashioned, highly polished dress shoes with thick heels, and crucially, they had a distinctive piece of gray fabric buttoned over the ankles.
So Frances immediately knows this is not her husband. She follows the legs up. This stranger is a small, unnervingly skinny man.
Yeah.
He's wearing black and gray striped pants, a white vest, and a long black coat with sweeping coattails. He has these strikingly bright blue eyes, and he is staring right at her with a wide, mocking grin.
Terrifying.
Frances sits up, terrified, and this stranger just leans forward, smiles, and says, "I'm here for Jean."
She screams. Little man laughs and then simply vanishes into thin air.
Just gone.
Gone. Jean bursts into the room a second later, having heard her scream, and he is completely fine at that moment. But despite searching the entire house and finding the front door mysteriously unlocked, there is absolutely no sign of an intruder.
And this is where the biological timeline accelerates in a terrifying way. Within 15 to 20 minutes of this vision, Jean's health rapidly, inexplicably deteriorates.
It's awful.
It's an absolute physiological freefall. By 8:00 a.m., the doctor has arrived. Jane is rushed to the hospital, and by the very next morning, his body shuts down entirely and he is dead.
Frances, understandably, tries to rationalize this horrific sequence of events. She is a modern woman in the 1950s. She convinces herself that the little man was just her subconscious mind's way of manifesting her severe anxiety about her husband's mortality.
Right.
A stress-induced hallucination brought on by years of caretaking and impending grief.
Which makes total psychological sense, right? Until the spring of 1958, a few months have passed. Frances and her 46-year-old daughter, Jane, are on a quiet road trip in Northern California, taking some time to celebrate Jean's life. Okay, the radio is off, it's just the hum of the tires on the pavement, and Jane suddenly breaks the silence. She tells her mother about something deeply unsettling that happened to her in her own home on the exact morning her father died.
Wow.
Jane says she woke up at 5 a.m., looked across her bedroom, and saw a little man.
And Jane describes the exact same polished shoes. The gray fabric over the ankles, the striped pants, the black coattails, the mocking grin, and those bright blue eyes.
Frances is absolutely stunned. She blurts out that she saw the exact same man at the exact same time. They start comparing notes in the car, putting all the puzzle pieces together.
Yeah.
And then Frances says, yeah, and right before he vanished, he told me he was here for Jean. And then your dad died 24 hours later.
Oh, man.
And the car just goes dead quiet. Jane looks at her mother, completely pale, and says, that's not what he said to me. He said, I'm here for Jane.
Frances immediately applies logic to protect herself from the implication. She tells Jane, you must have misheard him. He said Jean. You thought he said Jane.
Right, rationalizing it.
Exactly. She says, you're perfectly healthy and still alive, so obviously he was there for your father. They agree on this comfortable, logical conclusion to dispel the tension.
But they were tragically wrong. On December 7th, 1958, exactly 1 year and 1 day after Jean died, Jane passed away.
So sad.
It turns out she hadn't been perfectly healthy that morning. She had an aggressive, undetected cancer that had just started to crop up in her biology, and by the time doctors found it, it was entirely too late.
And it was only after losing both her husband and her daughter to this entity that Frances began obsessively researching the vision.
I would too.
She detailed the exact outfit the little man wore to historians and librarians. And she eventually discovered that this hyper-specific wardrobe, the thick-heeled shoes, the buttoned gray ankle fabric to protect from cemetery mud, the striped pants, the coattails, was the exact historically accurate uniform of a 19th century undertaker.
So what does this all mean? Like, I have to play devil's advocate here again because human memory is incredibly fragile.
It is.
When we look at shared delusions, psychologists often point to a phenomenon called folie à deux, or madness for two. It happens in enmeshed relationships where a primary individual who is experiencing a delusion essentially transmits that false belief to a secondary person.
That's a real condition.
Given that Frances and Jane were both grieving, highly stressed, and isolated in a quiet car, is it possible they simply contaminated each other's memories? Frances mentions a detail. Jane's brain latches onto it, and suddenly they accidentally talk themselves into a shared psychological delusion to make sense of the trauma.
This raises an important question about the limits of psychological rationalization. You are entirely correct that memory is malleable, and folie à deux is a well-documented mechanism.
Right.
But let's examine the extreme specificity of the construct in this case. A grieving, anxious subconscious might invent a generic monster, a shadow figure at the edge of the bed, or a traditional cultural grim reaper with a scythe.
Yeah, the classic cloak and hood.
Exactly. But Frances's mind conjured an incredibly specific, historically accurate 19th century undertaker down to the exact buttoned gray spats over the ankles. This was a uniform she had never seen before in her life and knew nothing about.
That is the sticking point.
The statistical probability of a stressed mind accidentally inventing a perfectly accurate historical death worker, and then her daughter's mind manifesting the exact same hyper-specific historical figure hours away stretches the shared delusion theory to its absolute breaking point.
It really does.
At a certain point, the psychological explanation requires more leaps of faith than the paranormal one.
It's too specific. It's too detailed to be a mere coincidence of grief. And that is what is so haunting about all three of these accounts.
Right.
If we pull back and look at the whole picture we've painted today, we have the immortal, undecayed corpse of Ephraim Gray. We have the phantom surgeon navigating complex human anatomy in a locked Brazilian church. And we have the spectral 19th century undertaker accurately predicting a family's tragic demise.
They all serve the exact same function. They strip away the comfort of our logical medical understanding of reality.
Totally.
We like to believe that with enough x-rays, enough chemistry books, and enough psychological theories, we can explain away every shadow in the dark. But these events force us to look at the undeniable data and admit defeat.
And for you listening right now, I think that's the real takeaway here. True learning, being genuinely well-informed about the complex world we live in, isn't just about accumulating facts and building those neat little logical boxes.
No, it's not.
Sometimes it is about having the humility to recognize the absolute limits of human knowledge. It's about accepting that sometimes when you drop the glass onto the concrete, it really does bounce back up into your hand.
There are mechanisms and forces at work in the universe that we simply do not have the vocabulary or the science to comprehend yet.
We started today talking about how unsettling it is when the rules of reality completely shatter. And I want to leave you with one final, deeply unsettling thought to mull over tonight. In the 1950s, when whatever force governs life and death decided to manifest in Francis's bedroom, it chose a 19th century undertaker's uniform. It reached back into history to find a symbol of death that was already outdated to communicate its intent.
Right.
So if the universe decides to send a harbinger to the foot of your bed tonight, what ordinary, everyday uniform from our past will it be wearing?
A truly chilling thought.
Keep questioning the impossible.